Greetings, O radiant particles, O shining points of light, information manifest. In this now we describe the nature of the information field, which is the source of all. Nothing is ever created, merely discovered or uncovered. Nothing is ever invented, it is merely found. Let us go to the beginning, the void. The void is the absence of everything. And being the absence of everything, it is the container of the possibility that everything could exist. So while possibilities themselves do not exist, the void is full of possibilities while being empty. And each of those possibilities have a probability. And the possibility and the probability together give rise to its potential. And it is that potential that is the force of the expression, which becomes the actuality. We call this the PPP paradigm: possibility, probability, potential. Now, since all possibilities exist in this now, as one, simultaneously in the one moment, nothing moves. The field of possibilities is static, for it never changes. The possibilities are always there. But what is the nature of these possibilities? Within the void and the one void, there is a natural logic. A logic that produces multiplicity, and connection, and differentiation, and integration, and unification. And these qualities produce what you would see as a multidimensional field of many natures. You could perceive it as a field of mathematical formula propagating from the one, in much the same way as set theory is propagated from very simple axioms. And you could say that the resolution of these formulae are what you experience as actuality. And within that primal logic, there is also resonance. So you could also see the information field as a resonant quality, a static resonant quality, in which there are nodes, and between the nodes there are spectrums of possibility. The possibilities collapse into a singularity at the nodes, and exist in an ephemeral state between the nodes. And that resonant field creates a pattern. And that pattern is your experience. You have seen experiments, or powders or liquids on a plate being vibrated by sound and frequency, and creating patterns within them. And you could see that nature in the information field. But in your plate experiments, notice that the shape of the plate changes the nature of the resonant pattern you perceive. And an experiment you cannot do is to ask what would happen if the plate were infinite. What pattern would you have then? And beyond that, what patterns are there in 3 dimensions? We will just say Platonic solids, and let you think on that. And we can take that further in 4 and 5 dimensions, and 6. And what sort of patterns exist in infinite dimensions? For the information field, from one perspective, does not exist in dimensions, and yet it contains infinite dimensions of information. You could also see the information field as being quantum. From your perspective, a quantum field is one where all possibilities exist simultaneously. So yes, the information field is quantum. You could also say in your terms that it is fractal. That is, every component of the information field is an individual, singular expression of one and the same thing, the one void. It is all similar, but different. For everything is unique, so every component is different. But every component is an expression of the one thing. And so there are self-similar patterns within the information field. And the median, the balance point, is your golden mean. And the expression you know as the Fibonacci sequence. These things are all within the information field, and so you see them expressed in your experience. And we could also say that the information field is complex. In that while broad spectrums of behavior within the field can be described precisely, the details are complex. In much the same way as if you plant an acorn, you know an oak tree will grow if given the right environment. It will not grow a rose bush. But in that oak tree, you cannot predict where each leaf will be, for that is the nature of complexity. And we can also say that the information field is holographic. And in your terms, you make holographic images by the intersection of 2 laser beams. And when re-illuminated by the laser beams, the image produces an illusion of a 3-dimensional object. And in the case of the information field, the synchronous point sources are the one and the void. and between them they create an infinite holographic field, which gives the impression, the illusion of a reality. You see the three-dimensional version of that reality, but there are, of course, 4 and 5 dimensions, and 6, and as many as you wish. But your consciousnesses are condensed down to the point where you only have 3 degrees of freedom left. For that is the real meaning of 3 dimensions in terms of your experience. 3 degrees of freedom of your consciousness. For if you observe the experience around you, the holographic projection of the information field, you will notice it will take many, many dimensions to describe it all. Each point of information produces a new dimension. 2 points define a line, 1 dimension. 3 points define a plane, 2 dimensions. 4 points define a volume, 3 dimensions. How many points of information do you see around you? How many dimensions of information are there? More than you can count, for sure. So as with the hologram, the illusion of the dimensional structure you perceive is just that, a projection of the information. It appears real, but it is only a projection. And since the consciousness locates itself within the information field by tuning to the vibration that is in the resonance of the information field, to move to a different experience is to change the resonance that you are tuned to change your vibration, to choose which vibration you tune to. At the moment, there is limitation on your perception. This was necessary for your experience. But you're coming now to a point where you can choose. And many of the mysteries of your culture will be exposed. You see now why we say your scientists do not invent anything. For what they find was already in the information field. All they did was find it. All creation was already in the field of possibilities. All that happens is that some part of that field of possibilities becomes expressed and manifest by consciousness. For the possibilities remain just that, until consciousness collapses the quantum field into an actuality, the actuality of your experience. And what you perceive as creation always produces something new, something different from your perspective, and in so doing increases duality. which means every act of creation moves farther and farther away from the One, from the Source. For increasing duality is always distancing from the One. And some may think, well, there's a long way to go back home to the Source. But as we have said before, infinity is cyclic. And because you have experienced infinite division, infinite duality, you are close now to the boundary of infinite division. And so just beyond the boundary is the Source, for all is cyclic. So in moving farthest from the One, you actually come closest to it. And each division away from the One Source is a limitation. In the same way that as a tree grows, the branches are thinner than the trunk, and the twigs are thinner than the branch. The interior of each twig is more limited than the interior of the branch. And you experience that limitation in the speed of your consciousness. Have you ever experienced being on a stationary train with another train next to you that is stationary, and the other train moves, and for a moment you get the impression that you have moved? It is unbalancing, unsettling. Or in your automobiles, if you are next to a large vehicle that blocks your sight and the vehicle moves, you may gain the impression that you have moved. Your film industry uses this illusion when they portray actors against a moving screen, a film projected onto a backdrop behind them of movement. And although the actors themselves are sitting still in a stationary car or other vehicle, they appear to be moving. And in the same way, the point of your witness, your consciousness, appears stationary. And you see everything else moving around you. But as we have said, the reality is one, in this moment, unchanging. And it is your consciousness that moves relative to it. So whenever you see something moving, it is not. It is your consciousness that is moving. And so the limit of your reality that you perceive as the speed of light is actually the speed of your consciousness that is limited. And what you perceive as increasing vibration, increasing frequency, as consciousness expands and encompasses more dimensions, is also an increasing speed of consciousness. If you think of driving down a road with dashes of white lines marking the lanes, and if you drive at 20 miles an hour, kilometers per second, whatever scale you wish to choose. You will see the white dashes coming past at a certain frequency. But if you increase your speed, you pump your accelerator, throw down your throttle, and drive faster, you will see the white dashed lines moving past you with a higher frequency. So your perception of increasing frequency with increasing dimensional awareness is really increasing the speed of your consciousness. And at the ultimate infinite limit, at the one, at the source, the speed of the consciousness is unlimited. It is everywhere at the same time. That is why the one experiences the all in the moment. For there is no restriction to the speed of consciousness. It can be everywhere at the same time. And as the information field propagates, if you wish to see it in terms of your time sequences, it divides and divides, going into lower dimensions, lower frequencies, lower speeds of consciousness. But in slowing the consciousness right down, you get to see the details that others cannot. If you were to crawl down the road that you went down with your car, on your hands and knees, with a magnifying glass, you would see a lot more detail in those white lines than you could from the car, travelling faster. And ultimately, you slowed your consciousness right down to a complete and absolute stop. Because infinity is cyclic, you would also be moving at infinite speed. One is just that and nothing else. And if you move from one towards zero, towards a plus zero, you will see that that is nothing. But if you look at your negative one at minus one, that's really, it means everything except one. And so from the minus one, if you move towards the naught, minus zero is everything. And likewise, minus infinity is plus infinity. So in slowing your consciousness right down, you have really come closer to infinite speed of consciousness. You have come closer to the one by moving farthest from it. And your experience, the journey, has been the purpose. The purpose to actualize, to singularize all those possibilities, to release all those probabilities, to express all that potential. so that consciousness can know what it is. So with much respect and love, we bid you greetings.